So say you start with the risk analysis, basic checklist, say lots of yeses, you need to think about something. Look at your contingency planning, but again, say, have you got workers from the EU? They need settled status. Do you need an EORI number? 10 minutes on a website. Hard borders, if you're bringing things in and out of hard borders, consider changing your port of entry. So there's winners and losers in Brexit. Dover could be a big loser because it's a roll-on, roll-off where the checks are done at the border. Every northeastern port, the checks are done at sea. So there's offshore checking for every single port up here, which essentially means as long as your paperwork's right and it's checked on the ship, you can bring the goods straight in. So the delays up here should be far less than you'd see in the southeast ports. As I say, electronic transfers, consider 2 bank accounts. We've had a lot of pushback in previous sessions saying, have you tried to open a bank account in Dublin? Have you seen how hard it is in Frankfurt? And yes, things have got harder, ironically, because the Europeans want to try and draw our business into their countries, so they're making it a little bit more difficult, a little bit more sticky. But there's still places like Luxembourg where it's relatively easy and straightforward. Supply chain assessment, like I say, can't labour this enough because the unintended consequence is going to be what somebody else is doing, not what you're doing. So you should be looking upstream and downstream in your supply chain. So is there something in that supply chain that if I were to lose, it's going to have a knock-on effect on what I'm doing? And has that person thought about all of this? Because again, the feedback we're getting time and time again is the further down you go in supply chains, you know, the generic 4th, 5th tier suppliers, they're not really aware that they're in that supply chain. They're just selling their widget to somebody and not thinking about that. And if you were to lose that widget maker, what does it do to your business? Onshoring and offshoring has been the big debate since the referendum, particularly with the brands and OEMs are big companies because they can move and quite often have lots of other plants. Got a client who has shut down all 4 UK plants so that they can retain finance and R&D in this country, but they had 50 plants around the world, so it was quite easy to divert manufacturing, and that was their contingency planning. But what that does is potentially give big gaps in supply chains. You know, if you're the people in that supply chain feeding up to those products, your customer's gone. You know, and they're not looking to keep the UK supply chain because it gives them the same problem. They're looking to replace it with European supply chains. Having said that, there's been a huge amount of American and German investment in this country because they're quite pragmatic, and they've looked and said, the UK is now 20–25% cheaper. You know, we can buy up assets. So there's new supply chains coming in and new potential customers, but there's disruption. And again, can't stress enough the 2 takeaways, last slide and this one, do your supply chain assessment, if nothing else, because that's most likely to have the most impact. And then timing. I mean, timing's everything, but you know, you've already seen mistakes in implementation timing with the stockpiling in January and February, you know, and that just caused all sorts of chaos in terms of cash flows for companies, warehouse storing. You know, need to do the plan and then figure out when.